Modern and ancient perspectives on the winter solstice. Originally hailing from San Antonio, Kathy is a lifelong learner with diverse interests in holding degrees in psychology, biomedical sciences, music performance, and public administrations. We have often enjoyed her accompaniment, her musicianship, her singing. I also happen to know that she speaks several languages. Kathy and her family live on a small farm in the woods in Conyers, Georgia, where they enjoy the company of chickens, quail, ducks, rabbits, cats, and dogs. During the work week, you can find her at Oxford College of Emory University, where she serves as the Director of Institutional Research. Join me in welcoming Kathy.
Thank you for the introduction and for having me as a speaker today. And today we are approaching the longest night of the year. Bill had mentioned that we only have, 4 more days or so of fall. So today, the longest night of the year falls on December 21st. So I'd like to speak to you about some of the real as well as metaphorical impacts of darkness on our lives and how we go forward into the light. Some of you know that I've been completing a clergy training program in Druidry, a pagan tradition, and some of the perspectives I'll be discussing come from pagan traditions. And I also wanted to let you know that we're going to have a little audience participation. It's sort of a pagan ritual, but also I think it'll be amenable to humanists and existentialists too. It's a little symbolic, you know. So I wanted to say a little bit about my own search for meaning. I actually grew up Unitarian Universalist, so I have this kind of natural resistance to swallowing any religious dogma whole. I grew up in Texas, so despite being Unitarian, I was, of course, exposed to a lot of Christian beliefs, and particularly as a singer, because my friends were always asking me to come sing at their church choir. So I've called myself a little bit, only partly joking, a church choir slut, because I can sort of be willing to overlook your dogma if I don't agree with it, if you have really cool choral harmony, you know. When Clint and I got married, he was actually raised Southern Baptist, so, real clash of cultures there. So we kind of met in the middle, and we went to Presbyterian churches for a long time, partly because they seemed like wherever we were, they had the best choir in town. But once I should say we were married in a Unitarian congregation, though. We were married in my mother's Unitarian congregation. But when Trump got elected, I just could not feel comfortable in that congregation anymore that we were attending in Conyers. And so we were looking for a new spiritual home. And I actually spent a couple of months at that point just identifying as an atheist, and then I realized that my spiritual center is really in nature. Few things inspire awe in me, like looking out over the ocean, or being in the mountains, or just, seeing that kindred intelligence in the eyes of a wild creature. I should say I spoke a little bit about, the deer. I talk to all the wild animals, not just our chickens and things. I talk to them too, but I talk to the wild animals. I think if you saw me, you'd think I was a crazy old lady or something, because I'm out there talking to the deer and the squirrels, and but they're my neighbors to me, So, it was a pretty short distance from that realization that nature is what really inspired awe and a sense of reverence in me to identifying as pagan. And that said, I'm going to be talking about some pagan beliefs and traditions, but I'm a free thinker. I expect you to be free thinkers too. So, take what you like. If it resonates with you, great, and leave the rest. And I'm not a pagan evangelist. So a little bit before I talk about the solstice, and specifically, I want to talk about the pagan wheel of the year. And so this is it's 8 holidays or celebrations around the course of the year, around the cycle of the year. And it's marked at sort of, usually when they draw the circle, they put the solstice or Yule at the top. And then the summer solstice opposite it. To talk a little bit about what is a solstice exactly? So we know that the Earth rotates around the sun, and in a year, it rotates around the sun approximately once, not exactly. That's why we have leap years, to make up the difference. But in addition to rotating around the sun, it also rotates on its axis, and that's why we have day and night. But it doesn't always rotate exactly on its axis. It tends to lean out a little bit away from the sun and then lean in towards the sun. And so when it's at its farthest point away from the sun, in the northern hemisphere, we have the winter solstice. And when it's at its farthest point leaning towards the sun, we have the summer solstice. And I want to mention that it's the opposite, of course, in the southern hemisphere, because it's doing the opposite. It's leaning the opposite way. So the solstice in winter is on December 20th or 21st, and it's the longest night and shortest day of the year. And other terms for the winter solstice are midwinter, if you've heard the term midwinter, or Yule. And then the summer solstice is in June. Is called midsummer or Litha. Litha is the pagan term. And it should be noted, again, that it's the opposite in the southern hemisphere. So we have those equinoxes marking halfway points in the year, and then between those, the solstices marking the halfway points in the year, and between those we have the equinoxes. And they're called equinox because those are the points in the year halfway between the solstices where day and night are of equal length. And so those are also pagan holidays. There's one in spring. It's usually March 19th to 22nd, and that's called Ostara. And that was originally a fertility celebration, celebrating the return of spring. In case you were wondering about all those chicks and rabbits being associated with Easter, that's the reason why. There's also another equinox in September called Mabon by modern pagans. That's a Welsh term, which is the last harvest celebration of the year, falling between September 21st and 24th. So the solstices and the equinoxes mark the 4 quarters of the pagan year. And then in between each solstice and equinox, there are 4 other holidays that are called the cross quarters for obvious reasons. And then the one in February is called Imbolc, or St. Bridget's Day in the Celtic tradition. It's sort of, there's some cross-pollination between Christian traditions and Celtic pagan traditions, particularly in Ireland. So the one in February is called Imbolc, or St. Bridget's Day, and it marked the time when sheep began to produce milk in preparation for spring lambs. So it's the time, it's like the quickening, it's the time when the very first signs of spring become evident. And then Beltane, or May Day, you may have heard of May Day, traditionally celebrated on May 1st, marks the beginning of summer with dancing around the maypole and bonfires, and that tends to be kind of a rowdy, happy celebration. You know, there's a lot of drinking. And then Lammas, or Lunasa, Lu was a god of the Celtic pantheon. Lammas, or Lunasa, at the beginning of August, marks the festival of the first harvest. And then at the end of October and beginning of November is Samhain, and it's spelled like Samhain, but it's pronounced Samhain or Samhain. And you may know that as Halloween or All Hallows Eve, or All Souls Day, or even the Day of the Dead, which we celebrate. So you can see these are kind of agricultural. They're very holidays that are very tied to the changing of the seasons and, you know, again, agricultural societies. I should say that, so the winter solstice is the beginning of winter in the astronomical calendar, but for pagans, Samhain is actually the beginning of winter. And I want to talk a little bit about Samhain. Again, this is the one that corresponds with Halloween that most people know about. The energy of Samhain is really important for understanding the winter solstice. So Samhain is both the pagan New Year, and again, it's the beginning of winter, but it's also associated with death, both the death of the earth, as we see the leaves falling and seasonal plants are dying off, we get the first frost, you know. But it's also a time for honoring our own beloved dead. So many pagans believe that around Samhain, the spirits of the dead may choose to communicate with the living, if you believe that sort of thing, right? And I should say a lot of that is symbolic too. You know, I'm perfectly willing to believe that if I believe that the dead have communicated with me, it could all be in my head, but everything is all in my head, really. My whole reality is in my head, you know. If your reality wasn't in your head, we wouldn't need psychologists, right, to help us with our realities that aren't working for us. Anyway, so a theme of Samhain is that we're entering a season of darkness. And I should say one of the first topics that we talked about when I started my Druid training was coming to terms with darkness. And so this could be literal darkness. We didn't do this my year because it was during COVID and we were most of our classes were online, but the Druid College would have their first-year students spend a night by themselves in the woods, you know, with no flashlight, nothing, just out in the woods to really fully experience, you know, what darkness is like, a natural darkness, you know, where there's, you know, no artificial light, right? It also means, though, as to use a Christian term, the dark night of the soul, things like losing friends and loved ones, coming to terms with our own mortality, experiencing suffering, seeing people we care about suffer, seeing suffering and injustice in the world. And I want to acknowledge that, you know, winter is a hard time for a lot of people. For myself, I haven't tended so much to get winter depression like people can get, but I could sleep like 20 hours a day in the winter. Pretty much from October to January or February, I start to perk up in January, actually. But one of my favorite Christmases was one in college when all my family left town to go visit relatives, and I stayed home and slept all day with my cats. And people kept calling and saying, "Are you okay? You're not lonely, are you?" And I was like, I am great. This is awesome. Besides a lack of energy, many people don't get to see the sun much in winter. It's dark when you head out to work, and it's dark by the time you make the commute home. And living in darkness like this has physiological and psychological consequences. Sunlight reaching the pineal gland through the eyes is responsible for triggering the conversion of melatonin, which helps you sleep, into serotonin. And so low serotonin levels have been implicated in certain types of depression. Some antidepressants actually increase the level of serotonin. So depression in winter is so common that there's actually a term for it, seasonal affective disorder, or it has the acronym SAD, which is kind of cutesy. But in countries near the Arctic Circle, where it can be dark all day in the winter, depression and associated problems like alcoholism can be, endemic through the long winter. The other thing is, we have winter holidays like Christmas and New Year's, and people can have really high expectations for the holidays being perfect, which aren't met, or expecting this holiday to live up to holidays in the past. Things definitely have changed for us since our son is an adult and we don't have a child in the house and have that sort of childlike enthusiasm for Santa Claus and stuff like that. We do celebrate Christmas. The other thing is that people can have grief surface or resurface for family members that are no longer around to share the holidays with them. And as challenging as winter can be now, you can imagine how much challenging it was for people in the past. Today, in industrialized countries like the United States, over 90% of houses have central heat. When the only form of heat was a fireplace, freezing to death was a real possibility if the fire went out. If you weren't watching and the fire went out during the night, or your supply of wood didn't last. Not having enough food to last if the winter was longer than you expected, that was a real possibility. And even today, I should say, when fuel prices rise, death rates increase in the winter. And we know that homeless people can die in the winter, can freeze to death in the winter. So it's still very much a threat. The cold in winter is a threat. And there's some evidence that in the past, particularly in cold climates, people actually did sleep most of the winter just to conserve food and energy and to stay warm, So me and my cats were kind of onto something there, I guess. Although the solstice is the shortest day of the year, it's also the day after which the days will start to get longer again. Therefore, it's simultaneously celebrated as a time of going, a time of darkness, as well as the beginning of the return of the light. And it's interesting that there are so many world celebrations in winter involving light. The lights of the Hanukkah menorah that symbolize the 8 days the temple lantern burned. The lights of candles for Christmas Eve services. Of course, we have lights on Christmas trees, right? And even the modern holiday Kwanzaa has a kinara that has, it's a little bit like a menorah, but it has candles of green, black, and red. The light can represent the light of the home, warming us against the cold and dark, as well as the light of community. So if lights of various kind represent the promise that winter is not forever, it's also been a tradition in many cultures to bring in winter greenery to cheer the home and to provide a comforting reminder that the light and the bounty of nature will return again. Trees and plants that survive the winter are a symbol of rebirth. So evergreen trees, like our Christmas tree, right? Holly, ivy, and mistletoe are familiar examples. The mistletoe was known to be sacred to the Druids, and each year a priest would ritually cut a branch from a tree with a golden sickle to be saved until the following year and burned in the winter solstice bonfire. So another solstice tradition and with pagan origins is the Yule log. So in Scandinavian countries, the Yule log was burned for 12 days in honor of the sun and to also ensure that the sun would be motivated to return. And the quality of the fire, like the sparks that came from the fire or the height of the flame, were used as a tool for divination to predict events of the coming spring. And this custom is retained symbolically, and this is kind of funny. Has anybody seen the Yule log dessert? Yeah. So it's a symbolic. That tradition is retained symbolically. It's like a rolled up log, shaped like a log, but it's a rolled up, long, thin chocolate cake that has whipped cream in the middle, and it's decorated to look like a log. And some people will get really into that and actually put little mushrooms and things on it. So a charming tradition, probably originating from Celtic paganism, is the battle of the Oak King and the Holly King. So the Holly King rules from summer solstice to winter solstice, and he brings the cold and makes the days shorter. And then the Oak King takes his throne at the winter solstice and brings with him the warmth and the longer days. And the two are in this perpetual battle. And in some modern pagan traditions, ritual participants can dress as the Oak King and Holly King and perform a symbolic battle and then exchange the crown of the season. So the other thing that midwinter is associated with is quiet and, that silence of winter and the time to reflect. So what have we done in the past turning of the year? What trials have we faced? What are we grateful for? And what in this time of renewal do we want to let go of? What people, to make space in our lives, what do we want to let go of to make space in our lives for the people, the activities that we want more of, and the feelings even that we want more of. And so to have a little demonstration of how you might use this at this time of year, I have a little pagan ritual. It involves fire, as many pagan rituals do. I'm surprised there's not more pagan ritual mishaps, by the way. But anyway, so I'm going to ask for some audience participation for this, okay? There we go. On. There it is. There it's on. So I'm going to pass around some paper and pens, and I'd like for people to write something they'd like to let go of this year as we're heading into the winter solstice. I don't have pens for everyone, but I have some pens. Yeah, that would be great. Thank you. Some little sheets of paper. I'll give you an example if it helps. And this is very concrete. I want to let go of car problems. The last two, not just this year, but the last 2 years, I have had more issues with cars. I have bought 3 new cars in 2 years. So, new, yes. In fact, I think I had an extra piece of paper somewhere. Where did I put that? There it is. I'm going to write that down. Yeah, thank you. And just pass up your papers when you're done. Yeah, we can put them in here. They don't need to be folded. I'm not going to look at them. Just leave that there. That's just a scrap of paper. Oh, that's fine. That's fine. Just shove them down in the end. No worries. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I found a secret stash of pens in my house. Oh, thank you.
Where did these go?
I can take it. Yep.
Anyone else?
All right. Last call. All right, can you guess? We're going to burn this stuff and we're going to let it go. If I can get this to work. So hopefully this will keep going. But as we say goodbye to all that stuff, and I hope I don't set off the fire alarm. We'll see. But let's think about, what do you want to make space for? And I have used this before, by the way. It's actually kind of nice. What do you want to make space for? I was thinking about this, the last couple days. I want to make space for more love. I want to make space for more music. Oh. I want to make space for more music. I want to make space for more friends. Anybody else? What would you like to make more space for when you clear out all that old stuff?
More compassion.
Compassion. Yeah.
I'd like to make space for Galileo.
Galileo. Galileo was.
The Earth was the center. Yeah. They didn't know what solstice was. Galileo.
Yep.
The correct way.
Yep.
For it, he faced a group of people much like us that said, tell us now the Earth is the center of the universe, or you're going to burn.
Yeah. Yeah.
They forced him to say the Earth. But Galileo was clever because under his breath, he said, see, move. They guided him. He said, it was still, it moves.
Still it moves. Yeah.
What did he say?
He's
Still, it moves.
still it moves. The Earth still moves. It's not the flat center of the universe. Yeah. Trusting. Yeah. Yeah. If I hadn't put car problems, that was one of the things I would have liked to let go of, was fear. Fear is just, isn't there a line from Dune that says fear is the mind killer? Fear can really mess up your head and your life. Yeah, Ted.
I like what everyone said so far about embrace all that, but then I think I want to make space for space.
Yes, yes.
Space ready for the next thing in your space.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh, nice.
yeah.
Vacuum that needs to be filled with something?
Yes.
Feels right away.
Right, right. Yeah.
Somebody say laughter.
Laughter. That's beautiful.
More helping others.
More helping others. Marcia.
Well, I feel bad about all those nice things. I want more fun.
Yes, more fun.
More self-care.
More self-care. Yeah, yeah.
Still haven't overcome COVID.
I know. Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm going to end by singing something, just a very short little song that I wrote. Let me see if I can get it on the right pitch. I'm going to do it a cappella. There is a love at the heart of this world, and it shines with the light of a million suns. I see your light in the dark, and I know we are one. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, shine on. Thank you. You all are a light to me.
Thank you, Kathy. That was very informative and very moving, that ritual. I enjoyed that a lot, yeah. So I am going to have my closing words, then we'll have another song, and that will be the end of the service. Someone I loved once gave me